This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome. You've heard and read the spin the media and the politicians have put on the issues of the day. To get the correct spin on what's going on in North Carolina, let's introduce you to our panel of experts. They include Peg O'Connell, who, in addition to being an attorney, does work for the healthcare industry and lobbies for them. Syndicated columnist and author of the new book Catalyst, John Hood. NC Policy Watch's Chris Fitzsimon. And Doug Raymond, political consultant who lives down in the eastern part of the state. I won't say down east anymore.
You're getting it right.
This week's show should be interesting. We begin by talking about Donald Trump's visit to Raleigh. Then we discuss whether the courts are fair, a new state branding campaign, and of course we'll ask the panel to tell us something we don't know. Let's get started. Even as shoppers are preparing for Christmas, the political campaigns shift into gear with more candidates filing. Dorton Arena in Raleigh was the scene for a big Donald Trump presidential rally Friday, December 4th, and a crowd estimated to be about 8,000 showed up to hear the Donald. Doug, one of Trump's repetitive themes is that the media is biased against him, and it seemed that many of the media reports focused on the rally on the protesters who interrupted his speech instead of what he had to say. Does this help reinforce his position that perhaps the media is biased against him?
Well, I think they are a little biased against him, but I thought overall the media they're always going to cover the conflict, that's part of it, but they showed him being there. They showed that there was a good crowd, showed up, had a couple sound bites, showed the protesters. But I've had this argument for years with folks about the big liberal bias in the media, and some of it is just natural. The type of people that tend to go into media are more creative, kind of left-leaning people, and sometimes it comes through, but I really don't think they're sitting in some dark room trying to figure out a way to bring Donald Trump down. But
all right, Chris,
it does play into his base.
This is the biggest softball question I have tossed to you in 18 years. What did you think of Trump's message?
Oh, fabulous. I think his message is, it's almost shocking, actually, for a couple things. It oftentimes is offensive, and it's really empty. He just stands up there and says he's going to solve all the problems, he's going to be tough. And the reason he's mad at the media is not just the media who people might consider liberal, but the mainstream media, conservative media outlets in the country, I think are frustrated that some of the things he is saying don't make any sense. And that people are still sort of falling for it because a lot of people are afraid. And, he's a phenomenon. He's not really a politician. And at some point, I think people are going to come to their senses.
Well, we keep saying that, but the PPP poll this week showed that he had risen 3 points in North Carolina and clearly leads the field here. Peg, are the voters of this state going to get disenfranchised with him at some time, or are they just loving what he's got to say?
Well, I think when you looked at what the PPP poll had him as the last name in a list of like 20 people. And so I think when people went down and they didn't know anything or they didn't know who any of these people were, they recognized that name and they said, that guy. Going back to the media's bias, I think we've heard so much from him that's exactly the same, and it's so egregious and so offensive that that's not the story anymore. The story is that people are actually standing up, people of reputation, and saying, this man is crazy.
Well, no, wait a minute. 36% of them say they're favoring him. The more outrageous he gets, the more he goes up in the polls. This week, John, he came out saying that he would ban all Muslims trying to come into the United States. How's that going to play out here?
I think, like much of what Trump says, it will play out with wall-to-wall coverage. This man is a talented, entertaining con man. That's what he has been for decades. He continues to be that. He has name recognition right now. I have to be persuaded this is going to turn out to be actual votes during caucus and primary season. If it does, then I think the Republicans are essentially committing seppuku. It's a little Japanese term for you. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think it's actually going to end up being a Cruz versus Rubio race, but we'll see what happens.
Doug, what's really going on here? There are a lot of analysts who are saying this is really an anti-Washington sentiment that's being voiced, that he is one of the front runners because he's really running against Washington, and even more specifically running against the Republican leadership in the House and the Senate. You agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's a really big part of it. And of course, we've been talking for months now. When's he going to fall? When's he going to fall? He says something more outrageous and his numbers go up. I had this thought today that he has kind of defined himself a little bit different than most politicians, and he's almost like a talk show host. If you can remember back to 9/11, there was a lot of talk show hosts saying, let's nuke the Middle East and turn it to glass, and then we can see the oil. And it was just an outrageous statement. We knew they made it. We knew that they really didn't mean it. And then we listened to other things. Trump tends to just talk off the top of his head, and then he kind of gets a pass for it, and people still stay with him. It's just an amazing.
Pass. He goes up in the polls.
Yeah.
How do you explain that phenomenon, Chris?
I think people are. John is onto something. There is a difference between people saying they'll vote for him when they're mad and a pollster calls them, or they're scared and a pollster calls them. We'll see what happens when they go to the polls in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, North Carolina, and a lot of other states. I do think it's interesting that this past week his comments about banning all Muslims even had Dick Cheney sort of calling him out. So, I mean, he really is, there's not many people he has not alienated.
Well, and it's a huge field of people they don't know, and the name they recognize is him. And so they say, that guy.
All right, so let's assume Trump does take a dive between now and March 15th. Number 2 on the list in the popularity poll in PPP is Ted Cruz. Then you got Marco Rubio. Is there anybody that you think that can win this nomination here?
Well, yes, somebody will win the nomination.
Yeah, I got that.
Stock market will go up or
I
down.
think it will truly be either Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz. I think that the other candidates will fall. I don't think Trump is going to make it. I think Bush, for all the money and all the establishment support that he has just not proven to be an effective candidate. I think that's the race in North Carolina. I think that's the race in the nation.
Doug, 2008, we remember, was the election where young people and African Americans turned out to the polls to vote. So far, this appears to be shaping up to be a campaign which is primarily appealing to angry white males. Would you agree with that?
Well, I don't know if I want to that much, but it's maybe people that have felt that anti-establishment would be a good thing. But the one thing I keep reminding people, and I'm not saying Trump's going to win, but he hasn't even started spending his money yet, and he's leading in the polls.
He spent $2 million so far.
But I mean, on planes, you haven't seen the Trump ads, and he has nearly unlimited funds. This isn't going to go away anytime soon, and I think people are underestimating.
I do think it's worth being serious for a second and talking about the damage I think he's doing to the national debate and the national psyche and saying offensive things and demonizing people. And I think he's really made this political season, on the one hand, people think it's funny, and we all do on one level, but some of the things that he's saying, and I think getting away with, is really abhorrent, and I hope it doesn't have a lasting impact on our political system, whatever point of view you have.
I agree with that, but I also, and this is why I still believe what I believe about the outcome, I think that in addition to the effect on the discourse, Donald Trump will be a disaster, a complete disaster for the Republican Party. That's why I don't think ultimately Republicans will nominate him.
All right, is it a pretty well foregone conclusion that Hillary is going to get the Democratic nomination?
Yes.
Bill Clinton was in Durham this past week, campaigning for her, supposedly raising money, I suspect.
Yeah, and it is a foregone conclusion, and I think that's one of the reasons that right now it might feel like it's mostly angry white males, whatever, because of the Trump factor and other things. The big action is in the Republican primary.
Yeah, and then remember, with our unaffiliateds being able to pick their party when the primary, the action's in the Republicans. They're probably going to pick that ballot.
Well, and I think Trump has already said that if you don't like me, Republican, 68% of the people who say they support me would support me as an independent. You'll have another Clinton election.
Dangling that carrot that maybe there might be a third party race,
that
which
Clinton
most
would owe an
pundits,
election to a third party.
and most pundits believe that if that happened, Hillary becomes president.
It would be a Ross Perot type of scenario,
Yeah.
a different kind of unhinged candidate, but the same outcome.
Well, we thank you for watching NC Spin on the air or on YouTube. Here's a reminder, there's much more on our website, ncspin.com, or NC Spin on Facebook. You'll find video footage not seen anywhere else, perspective pieces from our panelists, and my weekly column. Get more balanced debate from the Old North State on ncspin.com, NC Spin on Facebook, or on Twitter at NC Spin Tweets. When we come back, we're going to ask, are the courts fair?
NC Spin will return after these messages.
I'm Ron Elmer, investment advisor and CPA. I'll save the state $50 million my first year or work for free. Learn more at elmerfortreasurer.com. Paid by Citizens for Elmer.
Phones are getting smarter, cars more efficient, TVs bigger and more stunning. Imagine the same innovation from agriculture. Meet the Plant Sciences Initiative at NC State, a proposed state-of-the-art research complex where world-class researchers will tackle agriculture's toughest challenges, like feeding the world's rapidly growing population while preserving natural resources for future generations. Join Farm Bureau and NC State in moving North Carolina to the forefront of ag research in the world. Visit keepaggrowing.org.
Hey everyone, I'm Linda Loveland. If feeding your family safe, affordable foods is a priority for you, then join me in saying thanks to the North Carolina farmers who feed us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's say thanks to the farmers who feed your family at #ThankNCFarmers. To learn more about the foods we eat and the farm families who feed us, visit feedthedialoguenc.com. And be sure to thank North Carolina farmers.
We now return to NC Spin.
One of the tenets of this country is the belief that justice is to be blind and blind to political interference, prejudiced, and it should be trustworthy. Chief Justice Mark Martin has convened the North Carolina Commission on the Administration of Law and Justice to evaluate our courts, and as part of that process, commissioned 2 polls by Elon and High Point universities to gauge public opinion about the court system. The results were interesting and show that the public generally thinks our courts are fair. But they also confirm that people believe that blacks, Hispanics, non-English speaking, and low-income people receive worse treatment by the courts. Peg, Justice Martin's commission is due to present a full report to the 2017 session of the legislature. How might these poll results be used in making recommendations?
Well, I think the poll was commissioned in order for Mr. Justice Martin to make the case, legitimately so, that our court system needs more funding. They have been languishing for years for equipment, for personnel, for the things they need to bring the courts into this modern time. So I think he will use it that way. I think he will also use it to make the argument that the concerns the public had in the poll can be addressed by more money. And I think that's where it could get a little off track.
Help me connect the dots on that. I don't understand how fairness and more money necessarily relate.
I agree. That's what I was just about to say. I don't think the things that people worry about as far as the courts, which is how some people are treated, whether fairly or not, are going to be addressed by money. It might expedite the process of moving things through the court, but it's not going to make justice any more affordable. It's not going to eliminate people's prejudice.
Doug, one of the things this poll revealed was that people felt that wealthy and white people were more likely to be treated fairly. Why would this be the case? Is it because they've got better legal representation in court?
Nail on the head. That was going to be my theory. Is I would love to see some kind of study and look at minorities that had the funds to get good attorneys and see what their representation was. I think if you've got a good attorney, your chances of getting better treatment are much better than somebody who has no attorney or a court-appointed attorney. So I'm not saying it's completely colorblind, but I think money has a lot to do with it.
Well, and money has a lot to do with what sort of attorney you get in the current system. We've had for years, we've had a problem with the reimbursement rates. The reason a lot of lawyers don't want to participate in the program pro bono or the helping out as a county defender or defending the poor is that the reimbursement rate is really low. The legislature didn't raise it for years. The Indigent Defense Fund has been underfunded. So a lot of there is money issues on the court system.
So that is a connection.
There is a connection.
All right, 30% of the people, John, said that they had only 30% said they'd ever served on a jury. 28% said they'd been a plaintiff or a defendant. And 24% said that they testified. That's a fairly low percentage. So where are they getting this perception of fairness from?
They're getting it from their friends, and they're getting it from television. Mm-hmm. Some of them are actually getting it from watching Judge Judy. No, I'm not kidding. There's been I'm actually on Justice Martin's commission and was involved in setting up these polls. And the purpose is not simply an argument about funding, though that's part of it, but it's also about potential changes in policy or efforts to communicate to the public about how the court system really works. There's a wide range of issues being studied by the commission, and one of the findings in other states of similar efforts really was that people, because a lot of people don't have direct experience with the courts, their experiences are often shaped by watching television, including fiction.
So how is the media shaping that opinion? I mean, what is the media doing specifically that could give people the perception?
Have you ever heard the phrase Black Lives Matter?
Yes.
Okay. A big part of how people's perceptions of the justice system are being shaped right now is the controversy surrounding the last several years of shootings, allegations of police brutality. How did that play out in the courts? The case in Florida with self-defense. These kinds of issues that may not have anything to do with North Carolina do influence how people in North Carolina see the court system, including their own courts.
Chris, only 17% said they thought the courts were free from political interference. Now, I think that's interesting because our legislature just allowed partisan elections to take place. How might that be a perception?
Well, I mean, part of it is, I think, the big money we've seen in Supreme Court races when you see, millions of dollars spent from out of state with Justice Newby's election in 2012. I think the partisanship might be part of it. I just think they're distrustful at the moment. They think there's too much money in every election in all politics. I think the court system are caught up in that.
I don't know whether this is a fair question to ask, particularly with you on the commission, but what recommendations would you make, or any recommendations, to try to get a better perception of fairness or to ensure more fairness in the courts in North Carolina? Anybody want to offer something?
Well, I think the fact that 3/4 of the people, as you said, think that politics enter into it, I think what we need to do is publicly fund our judicial elections and take this huge amount of money and this partisan support, even though it's not labeled at the Supreme Court level, out of our elections. That would make people a lot more comfortable.
Would it help if we went to an appointive process for judges instead of an elective process?
It could. That's one of the issues I'm sure, like all previous commissions have done. We'll look at that particular matter. But it's unsettled at this point. And there are plenty of perception problems in states that have appointive systems.
Yeah, I mean, most people, they talk about it all the time when they get that ballot. They don't know anything about the judges. But if you sit there and you say, okay, this is going to, where are you going to stop? There's going to be a whole list of things that are on the ballot that people aren't really informed on. So it's not a perfect system, but I think it's pretty good right now.
We can at least, I think, all applaud Justice Martin for developing and having this commission.
Absolutely.
For that matter. All right. After these messages, we're going to talk about nothing compares to North Carolina.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
The cost of everything has gone up dramatically over the last 75 years. With one exception, keeping electricity affordable. That's the power of your co-op membership. Learn more at togetherwesave.com.
North Carolina's Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, looking out for you.
It's a fact. Patients who receive care in the medical home from a trusted family physician reduce healthcare costs through prevention, early detection, and affordable management of high-cost chronic diseases.
Every dollar invested in healthcare matters. Let's invest them wisely, building on North Carolina's medical home model. Better health begins with a medical home, a trusted family physician, the best return on our healthcare investment. Learn about the importance of medical homes at OurNCHealthcare.com.
You sleep on concrete till your body get immune to concrete.
My mom got my brother and I up and said, come on, we're leaving.
I became homeless in the beginning of this year.
When I was about 4 or 5 years old, our house caught fire.
I used to see my brother. If he see me, he'd turn and go the other direction.
We did the only thing that we could think of, and we went to a Salvation Army shelter.
We don't have this, like, what's your background look like? We just say, what do you need?
I remember the man from the Salvation Army coming down with a box of clothes.
The Salvation Army officer bought my brother and I an ice cream cone.
Last week, my brother walked up to me, and he just started a conversation.
Today I've given my life to the Salvation Army because I remember what somebody did for me, my brother, and my mom over 30 years ago.
The Salvation Army for me means hope.
Compassion.
Family.
Support.
We now return to NC Spin.
Governor Pat McCrory has often talked about North Carolina's brand. Recently, the state announced a new state logo and slogan, "Nothing Compares." The logo, obviously, is a play on the letters N and C and incorporates a longleaf pine between the letters and an outline of both the mountains and the sea. The new theme is being introduced with displays on 75 billboards across the state. Chris, through the years, North Carolina's had a number of slogans, including as many of us remember, Variety Vacation Land, First in Flight, First in Freedom. What do you think of this new one?
It is hard not to think of the Sinead O'Connor song, Nothing Compares to You. That's the first thing. Maybe we could persuade Doug to sing that in the next... I don't think it's a big deal. I did see one design critic called it a little clip arty, the design itself, which I sort of tend to agree with. If this is what they're going to come up with and spend $1.5 million on, I sort of wish this had happened not in McCrory's re-election year, just because I think that whatever you think of it, I think that'll determine what people think of it. I'm not sure this is going to make a big difference or not. I think we could probably use this money a lot better in other places.
He gave every state employee a lapel pin
instead of a raise
to wear. Well, that wasn't his to do, but I mean,
sure it was.
A lapel pin. What impression do you get from Nothing Compares, John?
Well, I do not have images of Sinead O'Connor conjured up in my head, fortunately.
Some of us do not even know who that is.
Exactly. Look, I saw I like the idea of using NC. I was trying to think of some other ways they could have gone. I think Now Conservative would have been an excellent marketing message for many people, and it would have made other people stay away, which would have been fine too. But the other thought that I had was take a picture of the best homegrown product in North Carolina, put it on the logo, and then just underneath, very simple question, need cheer wine? I think that would have been perfect.
Oh, a little tongue-in-cheek here. Commerce spokesperson Kim Gennardo said that most every agency and program in the state, particularly under the auspices of the Department of Administration, were being brought under this same branding because most all of them had their own logos and slogans and so forth like that. You're in the communications business and public relations business. How important is this?
I'm sure they're just thrilled about that. I mean, I just got to, to me, it could stand for not catchy because that it just doesn't do much for me.
Leaves you cold, huh?
It leaves me a little cold, and I was trying to think of something, but I mean, maybe we just need to show the diversity of the state and have a slogan that, from politics to barbecue, we can't agree on anything. That's North Carolina.
Gennardo said, Peg, that this new branding was getting a lot of positive and enthusiastic response across the state. Does that indicate to you that it might have some staying power, or is this just something that's going to be kind of a flash in the pan and go away and we'll get another one?
Well, our brand used to be the fact that we had world-class education and wonderful roads to drive on. So I guess the way things have changed, if this is as good as it gets, then we should get some positive results from it, I hope. But I would say it stands for no one cares.
Tom, it's interesting how things happen organically. Which has popped up all over the state is the little outline of North Carolina that has home and kind of the typewriter font in it. Right. And that seems to be much more catchy than this thing that we spent $1.5 million on. And for those
somebody probably has copyrights on that.
Exactly. And those who don't know Sinead O'Connor, a singer from the 80s who shares Chris's hairstyle. So look at it.
Actually, I think Chris has more hair.
I'm absolutely convinced we're going to get a lot of mail and a lot of criticism for this comment, and I'm really sorry we brought it up. When we come back after these messages, we're going to ask the panel to tell us something we don't know.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
Hey everyone, I'm Linda Loveland. If feeding your family safe, affordable foods is a priority for you, then join me in saying thanks to the North Carolina farmers who feed us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's say thanks to the farmers who feed your family at #ThankNCFarmers. To learn more about the foods we eat and the farm families who feed us, visit feedthedialoguenc.com. And be sure to thank North Carolina farmers.
Clean transportation options can help you fuel what matters.
We're fueling what matters to us by converting our fleet of collection trucks over to compressed natural gas. It's a good, smart business decision, and having the air cleaner is something that benefits all the families that work with us.
We use biodiesel in our heavy equipment. We've got propane in a lot of our police cars, and we've really embraced the electric car. Join the city of Raleigh and fuel what matters.
To learn how you can fuel what matters, visit fuelwhatmatters.org.
Phones are getting smarter, cars more efficient, TVs bigger and more stunning. Imagine the same innovation from agriculture. Meet the Plant Sciences Initiative at NC State, a proposed state-of-the-art research complex where world-class researchers will tackle agriculture's toughest challenges, like feeding the world's rapidly growing population while preserving natural resources for future generations. Join Farm Bureau and NC State in moving North Carolina to the forefront of ag research in the world. Visit keepaggrowing.org.
We now return to NC Spin.
When you folks see me and talk to me about the show, invariably I get a comment about this next segment of Tell Us Something We Don't Know. We asked the panel to, and by the way, it's totally unrehearsed. I don't even know what it's going to be. We asked the panel to tell us something we don't know. John Hood, I'll start with you.
Well, Tom, I may be mistaken about this, and it turns out I'm wrong once or maybe twice a year. So this could be that time.
It's Christmas after all.
But I think that Roy Cooper has just gotten to the left of Barack Obama on the issue of gun control. President Obama, in the aftermath of the San Bernardino terrorist incident, had proposed some kind of federal law or policy to prohibit people who are on the no-fly list from being able to purchase firearms. Roy Cooper, or maybe somebody acting on his behalf or urging him, suggested quite differently that anyone on the watch list, the federal watch list, which is a much larger list of people, many of the names are, fanciful. Teddy Kennedy was on the, a 2-year-old was on this list, that all of these people be prohibited from exercising a constitutional right. I think Cooper messed this up poorly and did his homework poorly, but whenever you find yourself to the left of Barack Obama running in North Carolina, check your premises.
Peg, tell us something we don't know.
Well, coming into this Christmas holiday, 1.5 million North Carolinians live in food deserts in North Carolina. That means that they will have no place to go to buy fresh food, to buy the things, the staples that they need to make a good Christmas dinner. And one of the things we can do is to try to increase their access to food, which will help make them healthier coming into the new year.
1.5 million.
Yes, 80% of the counties in North Carolina have food deserts, which means someone's got to drive 20 miles or more to a grocery store.
Well, we had seen the statistics that 1 in 4 children has some food deprivation sometime during the year. That's a staggering number.
It is, and it's unfortunate for a state that grows so much.
Yeah, Doug, tell us something we don't know.
We talked about polling a little bit in today's show. I think the 2016 election cycle may mark the end of polling as we know it, with the prevalence of cell phones, lack of home phones. Just 20 years ago, the accepted reply rate on a poll was 80%. It's down to 8%.
Really?
Both in Israel and England, not just America, polls are being, widely discredited and proven wrong. And I think you're going to see it again in this cycle. And either there's going to have to be some drastic changes to the way they do polling, but I think you're going to find don't trust those polls that you see right now.
Chris.
National Alliance on Mental Illness released a national report this past week that found, I think it was 11 states in the United States cut spending on mental health, which is a new emphasis in wake of all this gun violence. Only 3 states in the country have cut funding for mental health 3 years in a row. We are sadly one of them in North Carolina.
Oh, don't get me started on that. Well, you've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback and read my weekly column, visit our website, ncspin.com, or catch NC Spin on Facebook. And we hope you'll join us next week when we have more balanced debate for the Old North State. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.